The manager saw a black man with a white baby and assumed I was a lying thief, a scammer. So he humiliated us in front of everyone. Big mistake. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss stories like this. Because today's tale, you're not ready for how it ends. Now, let's get into it. The evening sun filtered through the tall windows of the restaurant, casting long golden shadows across checkered floors that had seen 3 decades of birthday parties, anniversaries, and quiet Tuesday dinners. The smell of garlic bread and marinara hung thick in the air, mixing with the low hum of conversation and the occasional clink of silverware against ceramic plates. Jordan Carter pushed through the heavy oak door, his daughter Lily balanced on his hip. She was almost 18 months old now, all chubby cheeks and wispy blonde curls that caught the light like spun sugar. Her pale skin, so much like Sarah's, seemed to glow against the dark fabric of his hoodie. He scanned the restaurant, his eyes adjusting to the warm interior lighting. Families crowded around tables. A server rushed past with a tray of steaming pasta, while someone helped him locate his table. And there, in the corner by the window, exactly where Rose said it would be, sat a small table with a handwritten card propped against a mason jar filled with wildflowers. "Reserved for Jordan and Lily." His chest tightened. 3 months of late-night texts, 2 coffee dates where Lily had smeared mashed banana across Rose's favorite cardigan, and she just laughed. And now this, a gesture so simple it hurts. Because it had been over a year since Sarah died, since anyone had made him feel like he deserved something soft. Jordan crossed the restaurant floor, weaving between tables, nodding politely at an elderly couple who smiled at Lily. He reached the corner table and set the diaper bag down on one of the chairs. He settled into the seat and positioned Lily in the wooden high chair, clicking the safety strap into place. She immediately reached for the flowers, her tiny fingers grasping at petals. "Not yet, baby girl," Jordan murmured, gently redirecting her hands toward the small container of mashed bananas he pulled from the diaper bag. "Let's eat first, okay?" Lily babbled something that might have been agreement or protest. With her, it was impossible to tell. He spooned a bit of banana into her mouth, and she grinned, orange mush coating her 2 bottom teeth. And then a shadow fell across the table. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, clipped at the edges like a blade that had seen too much use. Jordan looked up to find a man in his late 30s standing over him, arms crossed, jaw set in a way that suggested he was already angry before he'd even walked over. The man wore a white button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows and a name tag that read, "Nick, Manager," in blocky red letters. His eyes swept over Jordan, then Lily, then the reservation card, and something cold and final settled into his expression. "That table is reserved," Nick said. Jordan blinked, confused. He gestured toward the card. "Yeah, I know. Rose reserved it. I'm Jordan." "Rose?" Nick's voice spiked with disbelief. He leaned forward slightly, invading the space above the table. "Rose Bennett or another Rose," he said, and there was something ugly in the way he said it. Something that made Jordan's stomach twist, even before the words fully landed. "Rose Bennett?" Jordan answered slowly, keeping his tone even, non-threatening. Nick's eyes narrowed. He glanced at Lily again, at her pale skin, her blonde curls, her blue eyes, and then back at Jordan. The calculation was instant. Brutal. "You're telling me," Nick said, his voice dropping into something quieter and more dangerous, "that my sister reserved this table," he scoffed before continuing. "For you?" The emphasis on that last word was a knife. Jordan's hands tightened around the edge of the table. Lily, sensing the energy shift, stopped eating and looked up at him with wide, worried eyes. "Call her," Jordan said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline starting to flood his system. "She'll tell you." Nick didn't move. He just stood there, staring down at Jordan like he was trying to solve a problem that didn't have a good answer. Around them, other diners were starting to notice. A woman at the next table leaned toward her husband, whispering something behind her hand. A teenager near the door pulled out his phone. "I don't need to call anyone," Nick said finally. He reached down and grabbed the diaper bag from the chair, yanking it so hard that the zipper burst open. Baby wipes tumbled out, scattering across the floor. A bottle rolled under the next table. Lily's favorite stuffed giraffe landed someplace far from reach. "Hey!" Jordan stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "What are you doing?" "What am I doing?" Nick's voice was loud now, pitched to Carrie. People were definitely staring. "What are you doing? You're sitting in a seat reserved for someone of proper class, and you're barking at me, claiming you know someone you clearly don't, all while dragging that poor baby around like—" He stopped himself, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. Jordan's pulse hammered in his ears. He could feel every eye in the restaurant on him, could feel the weight of assumptions being made in real time. Black man. A baby that looks more white than mixed. Expensive table. It didn't add up for them, and Nick was making sure everyone knew it. "Like what?" Jordan's voice was low, dangerous. "Say it!" Nick's jaw worked. And then he said the thing Jordan had been bracing for since the moment this started. "How do I even know that's your kid? How do I know you didn't take some random family's kid just to ask for a ransom later? Or worse, how do I even know you're not trying to impersonate the guest? You could be his cleaner or driver for all I know." The restaurant went silent. Lily whimpered. She reached for Jordan, her small hands opening and closing in the universal gesture of a child who needed her parents. Jordan moved toward the high chair, but Nick stepped into his path. "You need to leave," Nick said. "Now, before I call the cops." "I'm not going anywhere until Rose gets here." Jordan's voice shook, but he held his ground. "This is a misunderstanding. Just—" Nick banged his fists on the table so loud it made Lily flinch. "Last chance," Nick said. "Walk out now, or I'll make you leave." Jordan's mind raced. He could feel his phone in his pocket. He could call someone, his lawyer, his head of security. He could end this with a single sentence. "Do you know who I am?" But he didn't, because he shouldn't have to. Because his name, his money, his company, his achievements shouldn't be the thing that determined whether he was treated like a human being. "I'm not leaving unless I see Rose," Jordan said quietly. Nick's expression twisted into something almost triumphant, and then he lifted a pitcher from an empty table and poured. The water hit Jordan like a physical blow, ice cold, shockingly brutal. It soaked through his hoodie, his shirt, and plastered his hair to his skull. The cold was so sharp it stole his breath, and then he heard it. Lily began crying. The water had splashed onto her too. Not as much, but enough. Enough that parts of her little dress were wet. She shrieked, reaching for Jordan with both hands, her cries echoing off the restaurant's high ceilings. Phones were out now. Multiple phones. The click and whir of cameras capturing everything. "That's what liars get," Nick said, his voice carrying over Lily's cries. He set the empty pitcher down on the table with a deliberate thunk. "Now get out, before I call the cops and have you arrested for trespassing and harassment." Jordan couldn't speak, couldn't move. His entire body was shaking, from cold, from rage, from the sheer weight of humiliation pressing down on him like a physical thing. Water dripped from his nose, his chin, and pooled in the hollow of his collarbone. Around him, people whispered. Someone gasped. A woman near the window was openly filming, her expression caught between horror and something darker, excitement maybe, the thrill of witnessing a spectacle. Jordan unfastened Lily from the high chair with numb fingers. She wrapped her arms around his neck, still crying, her small body trembling, and he covered her, trying to shield her from the cold, from the stares, from everything. He didn't look at Nick, didn't look at anyone. He just walked through the silent restaurant. past the tables full of people who would go home tonight and tell their families about the scene they'd witnessed. Past the servers frozen in place, eyes wide and uncertain. Past the host stand where a teenage girl clutched a stack of menus like a shield. He pushed through the heavy door and stepped into the parking lot, the evening air hitting his wet skin like a slap. Lily's cries had faded to hiccuping sobs against his shoulder. He could feel her breath, hot and uneven, against his neck. Jordan made it to his car before his knees gave out. He leaned against the driver's side door, holding Lily tight, and tried to remember how to breathe. Inside the restaurant, Nick Bennett was already dialing 911, telling them he'd just removed a threatening individual from his establishment. And somewhere in traffic, still 10 minutes away, Rose Bennett was smiling at her phone, rereading the text she'd sent Jordan earlier, saying, "Can't wait to see you." Jordan sat in the driver's seat of his car, the door still open, one foot on the pavement. Lily had finally stopped crying after he changed her dress. He stared at the restaurant entrance, watching blurred shapes move behind the frosted glass. Part of him wanted to go back in there, to make Nick Bennett understand exactly who he'd just humiliated, to watch the color drain from his face when he realized that the threatening individual he'd just assaulted could buy his entire business without checking his account balance. But the larger part, the part that was still a father before anything else, just wanted to disappear. Jordan pulled out his phone with his free hand. 7 missed calls, 12 texts. His head of security asked if he needed anything. His assistant wondered if he'd reviewed the quarterly reports. His lawyer followed up on a contract negotiation. None of it mattered. He was about to start the engine when headlights swept across the parking lot. A small sedan pulled in fast, tires crunching over loose gravel, and parked 3 spaces away. The driver's door flew open and Rose Bennett walked out with a smile, oblivious to what happened minutes ago. Jordan watched her disappear inside. He should leave. He should start the car and drive home and never think about this place again. Never think about Rose again, or the way she'd laughed when Lily grabbed her earring during their second coffee date, or how she texted him at 2 a.m. last week just to share a terrible dad joke she'd heard at work. He was still deciding when the shouting started. Even through the closed door, Rose's voice carried the kind of anger that came from somewhere deep and true. Jordan couldn't make out words, but he heard the tone, disbelief spiraling into rage. Lily stirred against his shoulder. "Dada?" "Yeah, baby girl, I'm here." The restaurant door burst open. Rose stood backlit in the entrance, her silhouette rigid with tension. She scanned the parking lot, her head whipping left, then right. When her eyes landed on Jordan's car, she broke into a run. Jordan barely had time to brace before she reached his open door, breathless and wild-eyed. Her hands were shaking. "Jordan." His name came out broken. "Jordan, I'm so sorry. God, I just saw the video. Someone posted it already, and She stopped, her eyes catching on Lily's damp dress, Jordan's wet hair, the soaked hoodie balled up in the passenger seat. Her face crumpled. "He didn't know," she said, the words tumbling out too fast. "He didn't know it was you. I didn't tell him about you. I just said I was meeting a friend, and This is my fault. This is all my fault." Jordan stared at her, at the genuine horror in her eyes, at the way her hands kept reaching toward him and then pulling back, like she wanted to fix this but didn't know how. "It's not your fault," he said quietly. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, flat, distant. "Your brother saw what he wanted to see." "But if I'd just told him, if I'd explained—" "You think that would have changed anything?" Jordan shifted Lily higher on his shoulder. She was getting heavy, but he didn't want to put her down, didn't want to let go. "You think if you'd said, 'I'm meeting Jordan Carter, the guy from the parenting group,' he would have suddenly treated me like a human being?" Rose opened her mouth. Then she closed it. She had no answer because they both knew the truth. Nick hadn't attacked him because of a misunderstanding. He'd attacked him because of what he'd assumed the moment he saw a black man sitting at that table. Red and blue lights suddenly washed across the parking lot. A police cruiser pulled in, moving slowly, deliberately. Jordan felt his entire body go rigid. "No," Rose said. She turned toward the approaching car, her spine straightening. "No, this is wrong. He called them. Nick called them." The cruiser stopped near the restaurant entrance. Two officers emerged, one older with gray threading through his dark hair, the other younger, maybe mid-20s. They approached the restaurant, hands resting casually near their belts. Rose took 3 steps toward them. "Officers, wait!" They stopped, turning toward her. The older one's expression was carefully neutral, the younger one's slightly wary. Rose closed the distance. The older officer glanced at Jordan, then back at Rose. "Ma'am, are you affiliated with the establishment?" "I'm Rose Bennett. Nick Bennett is my brother. He's the manager." She sucked in a breath, steadying herself. "He was wrong. Jordan didn't do anything wrong. I invited him here. I reserved that table for him. My brother attacked him because—" She faltered. The younger officer's hand had moved closer to his radio. "Because he made assumptions," Rose finished, her voice hardening. "Wrong assumptions." The older officer studied her for a long moment. Then he looked past her shoulder toward Jordan's car. "Sir, can you step out of the vehicle, please?" Jordan's heart hammered against his ribs. Lily was still in his arms, still vulnerable. He thought about all the videos he'd seen, all the news stories about traffic stops and misunderstandings and split-second decisions that ended in tragedy. But he couldn't run, couldn't hide. So he climbed out of the car, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible, Lily secure against his chest while covering her face. The older officer nodded slowly. "We received a call about a disturbance. The manager said someone was harassing staff and refusing to leave." "That's not what happened." Rose stepped between them, her voice rising. "That's not even close to what happened. My brother saw Jordan sitting at a table I reserved. Made assumptions because—" She stopped again, but this time the officer finished for her. "Because of how Mr. Carter looks." Rose's eyes widened. "Yes." The older officer sighed. It was a heavy sound, laden with something that might have been recognition or resignation or both. He looked at Jordan again, really looked this time, and something shifted in his expression. "You're Carter," he said. Not a question, a statement. Jordan nodded once. "Jordan Carter. Carter Cybersecurity," the officer stated. Another nod. The younger officer glanced at his partner, confused. The older one rubbed his jaw, his wedding ring catching the parking lot light. "I use your software at home, for my kids' computers." The absurdity of the moment crashed over Jordan like another pitcher of ice water. Here he was, soaking wet, holding his traumatized daughter, being questioned by police, and the officer recognized him from a product review. "It's good software," the officer continued, then quieter. "What happened in there?" Jordan told them. "Everything. The reservation, Nick's accusations, the water, the phone's recording." By the time she finished, the younger officer was staring at the restaurant entrance like it had personally offended him. The older officer shook his head. "This is going to be a problem." "For who?" Rose's voice cracked. "For everyone." The officer pulled out a small notebook. "I need to file a report. Mr. Carter, do you want to press charges?" Jordan looked down at Lily. Her eyes were closed now, exhausted from crying. Her small fingers clutched his shirt collar. She looked so much like Sarah in this light, the curve of her cheek, the way her lashes fanned against her skin. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Right now, I just want to take my daughter home." The officer nodded. "Understandable, but I need to tell you there's a video. Multiple people posted it. It's already spreading online. By morning, this is going to be everywhere." Jordan had built a billion-dollar company by understanding systems, how they worked, how they failed, how information moved through networks like water finding cracks in stone. He knew what viral meant, knew what happened when the internet decided someone deserved justice. "I'll think about it," he said. The officers exchanged glances. The older one handed Jordan a card. "Call me tomorrow. We'll need a formal statement if you decide to move forward." They headed toward the restaurant, leaving Jordan and Rose alone in the parking lot. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and Lily's soft breathing. "I went in there expecting to see you smile," Rose said finally. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I had this whole thing planned. We were going to have dinner, and I was going to tell you that I—" She stopped. "It doesn't matter now." "Tell me what?" She looked at him, really looked at him, and her eyes were full of something that might have been a possibility, might have been regret. "That I wanted to see where this could go. You and me. Us." Jordan's chest tightened. 3 months ago, that would have meant everything. 3 weeks ago, he might have kissed her right there in the parking lot, might have let himself believe that moving forward was possible. But that was before her brother had reminded him of the fundamental truth he'd been trying to ignore. No matter how much money he had, no matter what he built or achieved, some people would only ever see his skin color. And those people would always have the power to hurt him. To hurt Lily? "I can't do this, Rose," he said softly. "Not right now." She nodded, tears spilling over. "I understand." But she didn't move. Neither did he. They stood there in the yellow parking lot light. Two people who might have been something in a different world, in a different story. Inside the restaurant, Nick Bennett watched through the window as his sister talked to the black man he'd just thrown out. He watched her cry. He watched her reach out like she wanted to touch him, and he felt something cold and certain settle in his stomach. He'd made a mistake. A big one. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Text messages. Dozens of them. He pulled it out and watched his screen flood with notifications. The video was everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and in every comment section, in every share, people were saying his name. Nick Bennett, racist, bigot, monster. The restaurant phone started ringing. Then it didn't stop. By midnight, the video had 2 million views. By morning, it would have 10 million. And by tomorrow afternoon, Jordan's face would be on every news channel in the country. Not as the reclusive billionaire who'd built an empire, but as the black father who'd been humiliated while holding his baby daughter. The whole world was about to know his name, and there would be no going back. Jordan didn't sleep. He sat in Lily's nursery for hours, watching her chest rise and fall in the dim glow of her nightlight. She'd finally gone down around 9. His phone sat face down on the dresser, vibrating every few seconds. He'd stopped looking at it around 11. The messages were all the same anyway. Friends he hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly concerned about his well-being. Journalists are asking for exclusive interviews. Strangers sending prayers and rage in equal measure. And underneath it all, a single text from his head of security, sent at 11:47 p.m. "We need to talk. First thing tomorrow." When dawn finally bled through the curtains, Jordan extracted himself from the rocking chair and moved like a ghost through his house. The place felt different in the morning light. Too quiet, too big, all the careful distance he'd maintained from the world suddenly feeling less like protection and more like isolation. He made coffee, checked his phone, immediately wished he hadn't. The video had 17 million views. 17 million people had watched him get soaked with ice water while holding his daughter. 17 million people had heard Nick Bennett question whether Lily was even his child. And the comments. God, the comments. Thousands of them. Most were supportive, outraged on his behalf, demanding justice. But others. Maybe there's more to the story. Why was he even at that restaurant? Something doesn't add up. Jordan set his phone down before he could read further. He knew better than to scroll through comment sections. Knew that for every 100 people who saw the truth, there would be 10 who'd twist it into something else, who'd find a way to make this his fault. His doorbell rang at 7:30. Through the peephole, he saw Tim, his head of security, former Secret Service, the kind of man who could spot a threat from 3 blocks away. Jordan opened the door, and Tim stepped inside without preamble, his expression grim. "We have a situation," Tim said. 3 news vans outside your office building. 2 more are parked at the end of your street. And Bennett's Family Restaurant has about 50 protesters in the parking lot. Jordan moved to the kitchen, Tim following. "How bad?" "Bad enough that the mayor's office issued a statement this morning calling for a full investigation." Tim pulled out his tablet, swiping through news articles. "The health department showed up at the restaurant at 6 a.m. Surprise inspection. Found multiple violations, expired permits, improper food storage, some equipment that should have been replaced 5 years ago. Convenient timing. Viral attention has a way of triggering bureaucratic interest." Tim set the tablet on the counter. "There's more. Nick Bennett was arrested an hour ago." Jordan's head snapped up. "He was?" "Yes, based on assault. The video's pretty clear evidence. Plus, he filed a false police report when he called the cops on you." Tim paused. "The DA's office is being very aggressive. Election year." "Of course. Nothing motivated justice quite like the optics of protecting a wealthy black man in front of cameras." Jordan wondered if they'd move this fast if he were still anonymous. Still just another single father trying to feed his daughter in peace. "I had a lawyer contact me," Jordan said quietly. "Civil rights attorney. Pro bono." "You don't need pro bono." "I know, but I think I need someone who actually cares about this beyond the settlement check." Jordan poured coffee he didn't want, just to have something to do with his hands. "What do you think I should do?" Tim was quiet for a long moment. "As your head of security, I think you should let this die. Issue a statement, accept an apology, move on. Every day you keep this alive is another day Lily's face is circulating online. And as Tim, not as my employee, as Tim," the older man's jaw tightened, "I think you should burn that whole goddamn restaurant to the ground. Not literally, but legally. Make it hurt." Jordan almost smiled. Almost. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Rose. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know what's happening. The restaurant is being shut down. My brother is in jail, and my family is destroying itself. I'm not asking for sympathy. I just thought you should know." He stared at the message for a long time. Then he forwarded it to Tim. "What does that sound like to you?" Tim read it twice. "Sounds like someone trying to make you feel guilty for what her brother did. Or someone being honest about consequences. Those can be the same thing." Jordan's phone rang before he could respond. His lawyer. He answered on speaker. "Mr. Carter, I wanted to give you a heads up before it hits the news. Margaret and Thomas Miller have filed for emergency custody of Lily." The kitchen tilted. Jordan gripped the counter to steady himself. "What?" "They're arguing that recent events demonstrate instability and poor judgment, that you deliberately put Lily in a dangerous situation and exposed her to trauma by choosing to pursue a public relationship with," papers rustled on the other end, "a woman from an inappropriate social circle whose family has displayed violent tendencies." "That's insane. Jordan couldn't breathe. "They're using this against me? They're using what Nick Bennett did to me as proof I'm unfit?" "I'm afraid so. They've also cited your wealth as a liability, claiming it makes Lily a target for kidnapping and exploitation." His lawyer's voice was carefully neutral, but Jordan heard the anger underneath. "The hearing is scheduled for next week." Tim swore under his breath. Jordan said nothing at all. He just stood there in his kitchen, in his quiet house, while the world closed in around him like a fist. "They never wanted me to have her," Jordan said finally. Sarah's parents. They thought she made a mistake marrying me. They told her that, at the wedding. They even refused to accept a mixed baby. Can you use that? I can try, but Mr. Carter, I need you to understand something. The Millers have retained Patricia Voss. The name meant nothing to Jordan. Tim's expression said it should. She's a specialist, his lawyer continued. High net worth custody disputes. She's very good at painting wealthy fathers as negligent, distracted, using nannies as replacement parents. And with this restaurant incident getting national attention, they're going to say I provoked it, that I chose revenge over my daughter's well-being. Yes. Jordan closed his eyes, saw Lily's face when the ice water hit, heard her screams echoing through the restaurant, felt the weight of her in his arms as he'd carried her out through a crowd of strangers with cameras. What do I need to do? He asked quietly. First, we file a response. Second, we get character witnesses lined up, people who can testify to your devotion as a father. Third, his lawyer hesitated. Third, you need to be very careful about your next move regarding Nick Bennett. Anything that looks vindictive will be used against you. So I should just let it go. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that whatever you do it for the right reasons. Not anger, not revenge. Jordan ended the call, set his phone down. Then he looked at Tim. I need you to find out every piece of evidence that shows the Millers abandoned Sarah when she married me. Already on it. And Tim, I'm pressing charges against Nick Bennett. Not because I'm angry, though God knows I am, but because my daughter needs to grow up in a world where this isn't acceptable, where people face consequences. Tim nodded slowly. What about Rose? I don't know yet, he said honestly. Upstairs, Lily started crying. Jordan took the stairs 2 at a time, his chest loosening slightly at the sound. When he opened her nursery door, she was standing in her crib, hands gripping the rail, blonde curls wild around her face. The moment she saw him, she smiled. Dada! He crossed the room and scooped her up, burying his face in her hair. She smelled like baby shampoo and innocence, like everything good he'd ever done in his life distilled into 18 months of giggles and sticky fingers and unconditional love. I've got you, baby girl, he whispered. Nobody's taking you anywhere. I promise. His phone buzzed again downstairs. Another news alert. Another 1,000 comments. Another 1,000,000 views. The machine he'd accidentally set in motion was already too big to stop, careening forward on its own momentum. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Jordan had just finished feeding Lily breakfast, scrambled eggs that she'd mostly smeared across her high chair tray while making sounds that might have been words or might have been nonsense. He was wiping orange juice off her chin when the doorbell rang, sharp and official. Through the window, he saw a man in a suit holding a clipboard, process server. Jordan had seen enough of them in his business career to recognize the stance, the careful neutrality of someone delivering bad news for a living. He opened the door. The man didn't meet his eyes. Jordan Carter? Yes. You've been served. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and expensive, the kind of paper that announced itself as important before you even broke the seal. Have a good day, sir. The man was back in his car before Jordan could respond. He stood in the doorway, Lily babbling behind him, and stared at the envelope as if it might explode. It was worse than an explosion. Miller Carter. Emergency petition for custody, modification, and grandparent visitation rights. Dazadai. Words swam on the page. Legal language. Dense. Clinical. Designed to drain humanity from what it was actually saying. That Margaret and Thomas Miller, his late wife Sarah's parents, believed their granddaughter would be better off without him. Jordan's hands shook as he read. The petitioners submit that recent events demonstrate a pattern of poor judgment and instability on the part of the respondent. On the evening of June 15th, Mr. Carter deliberately placed the minor child in a volatile situation at Bennett's family restaurant, where she was subjected to a physical altercation that resulted in her being doused with ice water. Mr. Carter then chose to escalate the incident through social media and legal channels, prioritizing public attention and personal vindication over the child's privacy, safety, and well-being. He had to read it 3 times before the words stopped fragmenting. They were blaming him, not Nick Bennett for throwing the water, not the crowd for filming, him for being there, for sitting at a table, for existing. Furthermore, Mr. Carter's substantial wealth, while providing material security, creates an environment of elevated risk. The minor child has become a target for media scrutiny, public commentary, and potential exploitation or kidnapping. The petitioners can provide a stable, private home environment free from such dangers. Jordan's vision tunneled. His wealth was now a weapon they could use against him. Everything he'd built, the company, the security, the future he'd tried to create for Lily, twisted into evidence of his unfitness. The petition continued for 8 more pages. Photographs of the restaurant incident, screenshots of news articles, a psychological evaluation they'd commissioned from an expert witness who'd never met Jordan but had plenty of opinions about high-profile fathers and emotional unavailability. And at the bottom, stamped in red, emergency hearing scheduled for June 28th, 10 a.m., 6 days from now. Jordan sank onto the couch, the paper spilling across his lap. Behind him, Lily had abandoned her breakfast and was pulling books off the bottom shelf, each one hitting the floor with a satisfying thud that made her laugh. 6 days to prove he deserved to keep his own daughter. His phone rang. His lawyer. "It's uglier than I expected. They're not playing around, Mr. Carter. Patricia Voss doesn't file emergency petitions unless she thinks she can win." "On what grounds? That I got assaulted?" Jordan's voice cracked. "That I had the audacity to exist in public with my daughter? On the grounds that your response to that assault demonstrated questionable priorities." His lawyer's tone was measured, careful. "They're arguing you chose publicity over protection, that a responsible parent would have handled it quietly. By letting it go, by teaching my daughter that when someone humiliates you, you just take it and say nothing. I'm not defending their position, Mr. Carter. I'm explaining it." Jordan pressed his palm against his eyes. Lily had moved on from books to blocks, stacking them with intense concentration. She looked so much like Sarah in profile, the curve of her nose, the determined set of her mouth when she focused. Sarah would have known what to do. Sarah always knew what to do. But Sarah was gone, and Jordan was alone. The real problem is the narrative they're building. A wealthy black man prioritizes his ego over his daughter's safety. It plays into every stereotype about absent fathers, about men who view children as possessions rather than responsibilities. That's insane. I've never missed a doctor's appointment, never skipped bedtime. I'm the one who gets up at 3 a.m. when she has nightmares. I know, and will present all of that. But Mr. Carter, you need to understand something. This isn't really about you being a bad father. It's about you being a black father raising a white-presenting child in a country that questions that dynamic at every turn. The words landed like stones. Jordan had always known this, of course, had felt it in the stares at the playground, the questions from well-meaning strangers who assumed he was the nanny, the woman at the grocery store who'd called security because she thought he was kidnapping Lily. But knowing it and hearing it stated so plainly were different things. So what do I do? You need to be perfect. For the next 6 days, you will be the most devoted, most visible, most unimpeachable father. Document everything. Post photos with Lily. Get statements from everyone who's ever seen you parent. And Mr. Carter? Yeah? Don't do anything they can twist. No angry statements, no confrontations, nothing that makes you look like a threat. Jordan ended the call, set his phone down, stared at the custody petition spread across his coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. Lily appeared at his knee, a block in each hand. "Dada, up." He pulled her into his lap and she settled there immediately, warm and solid and real. She handed him a block. He took it. She handed him another. They built a tower together, her small hands guided by his larger ones, until it was tall enough to knock down. She squealed with delight when it fell, blocks scattering across the hardwood floor. "Again," she demanded. So they built it again, and again, and again, until Jordan's phone buzzed with a text that made his stomach drop. It was from Rose. "I heard about the custody petition. I'm so sorry. If you need someone to testify, I will. I'll tell them everything. How you were with Lily, how gentle you were, how my brother was the only aggressor. I know you probably don't trust me. I know my family has destroyed enough, but I'm offering anyway, because it's the right thing to do." Jordan read it twice. Lily climbed down from his lap and returned to her blocks, content to play alone. He thought about Rose standing in the parking lot, crying as he drove away. Thought about her. Text the morning after, warning him about the restaurant closure. Thought about what it meant to testify against your own brother, your only family, for someone you barely knew. He typed, "Why?" Her response came immediately, "Because you deserve to keep your daughter, and because someone has to stand up and say what happened was wrong, even if that someone is a Bennett." Jordan stared at the message. Tim's warning echoed in his head. Sounds like someone trying to make you feel guilty. But there was something else there too. Something that felt like genuine remorse, genuine courage. He typed, "My lawyer will contact you." Then he set his phone aside and returned to Lily, who'd moved on from blocks to her toy kitchen. She handed him a plastic orange. "Cook, Dada." So he pretended to cook, pretended to eat the plastic food she prepared with such seriousness, pretended that in 6 days, a judge wouldn't decide whether he was fit to be her father. Outside, news vans still lined the street. His security team had counted 8 yesterday. Tim had installed additional cameras, reinforced the gate code, and briefed the household staff on what to say if approached by reporters. Jordan's phone buzzed again. Another message, this one from a number he didn't recognize. "We're watching you, Carter. You think you can destroy a family business and face no consequences? You think your money protects you? Your daughter looks awfully white. Makes people wonder." His blood went cold. He forwarded it immediately to Tim, then to his lawyer, then to the police. The response was always the same. "We'll look into it. Be vigilant. Consider additional security." But security couldn't protect Lily from the fundamental danger of being his child. Couldn't shield her from a world that questioned her existence every time they left the house. Couldn't stop judges from wondering if maybe, just maybe, she'd be safer with white grandparents who could give her a normal life. Rose sat in the county jail visiting room, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The smell of industrial cleaner and stale coffee hung in the air, mixing with something else. Desperation, maybe, or just the accumulated weight of bad decisions made by people who'd ended up on the wrong side of steel doors. Nick appeared behind the plexiglass partition, looking smaller than she remembered. His white button-down had been replaced with an orange jumpsuit that washed out his complexion. His eyes were red-rimmed, hollow. When he picked up the phone on his side of the glass, his hand shook. "Rosie," his voice cracked. "Thank God you came. I wasn't sure you would." She didn't pick up her phone immediately, just looked at him. Her brother. The person who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd scared away her terrible high school boyfriend, who'd worked 18-hour days to keep their parents' restaurant alive after they died, the same person who'd poured ice water on a man holding a baby. Finally, she lifted the receiver. "I almost didn't. I know I messed up. I know I—" He stopped, swallowed hard. The lawyer says they're pushing for 6 months, maybe more. And the civil suit Jordan's filing, Rose, it could bankrupt us. The restaurant's already gone. The house might be next. You did this, Nick. Not me, not Jordan. You. I thought he was lying. I thought... His voice rose, then dropped when the guard near the door shifted. I thought he was taking advantage of you. No, Rose's voice was ice. You thought he was black and didn't belong. That's what you thought. Don't dress it up as protection. Nick's face crumpled. I'm your brother, your only family. And Jordan's Lily's only family. Did you think about that when you humiliated him? When you threw water on his baby? It was just water, Rose. Just water. You traumatized a child, Nick. You made a father feel worthless in front of his daughter. You proved to him that no matter what he builds, no matter what he achieves, someone like you will always see him as less than human. She leaned forward, her breath fogging the plexiglass. And now his in-laws are trying to take Lily away. They're using what you did as evidence that he's unfit. The color drained from Nick's face. What? Custody hearing. 6 days from now. They're arguing that he put Lily in danger by being at the restaurant, that his response to your attack showed poor judgment. Rose's eyes burned. So yes, Nick, it was just water. Water that might cost a man his daughter. Nick set the phone down, put his head in his hands. For a long moment, Rose thought he might actually break. But then he looked up, and there was something desperate in his eyes that made her stomach turn. Then help me, he said. Talk to Jordan. Tell him to drop the charges, to settle quietly. If this goes to trial, Rose, I'm done. We're done. Everything Mom and Dad built... Stop! Rose stood abruptly, the metal chair scraping against linoleum. I came here to tell you something, and you're going to listen. I'm testifying. At Jordan's custody hearing. I'm going to tell the judge exactly what happened. How Jordan did nothing wrong. How you attacked him unprovoked. How he showed more restraint than you deserved. You can't do that. Rose, you can't... I already told his lawyer I would. Nick's expression cycled through disbelief, betrayal, and rage. You're choosing him over me, over your own brother. I'm choosing what's right over what's easy. Rose's voice didn't waver. For once in my life, I'm doing the right thing, even if it costs me everything. It will cost you everything. You understand that? When this is over, you'll have nothing. No family. No. I'll have my conscience. She pressed her palm against the plexiglass. A goodbye. That's more than you'll have. Also, you're lucky that the threat Jordan got was from some internet troll. Things could have gone worse for you if one of your guys had sent it. She hung up the phone and walked out, Nick's muffled shouting following her down the corridor. Jordan answered his door that evening to find Rose standing on his porch, her eyes swollen from crying. She held a manila folder against her chest like armor. I know you said your lawyer would contact me, she said before he could speak. But I needed to come myself, to give you this. She held out the folder. Jordan took it, careful not to let their fingers touch. Inside were printed emails, text messages, photos, all time-stamped, all dated. It's everything, Rose said quietly. Every conversation we had before that night. Proof that I invited you, that we'd been talking for weeks, that I was... She stopped, breathed. That I cared about you, that this wasn't some random encounter or misunderstanding. Jordan flipped through the pages, screenshots of their late-night texts about parenting struggles, a photo she'd taken of them at their second coffee date, Lily between them with a banana in her hair, all three of them laughing. Messages where Rose had asked about his favorite foods, his hopes for Lily's future, and whether he thought Sarah would approve of him moving on. Why are you doing this? Jordan asked. Because it's right. That's not enough of a reason to destroy your family. Rose's laugh was bitter. My family destroyed itself the moment Nick decided you were a threat because of your skin color. I'm just making sure the truth gets told. She paused. I visited him today. Nick. He asked me to convince you to drop the charges. What did you say? I told him I'm testifying against him. Jordan studied her face. The determination is there. The grief. You know what they'll do to you on the stand. The Miller's lawyer. She'll tear you apart. Make you look like a scorned woman, someone with an agenda. Let her try, Rose's jaw set. I can take it. Can you? I don't have a choice. Neither do I. Not anymore. She turned to leave, then stopped. Jordan, I know you don't owe me anything. I know my last name is probably poison to you now, but I need you to know what I felt for you was real. What I feel is still real. And even if nothing ever happens between us, even if you never forgive me or my family, I'm going to fight for you, for Lily, because you deserve to be her father. She walked to her car before Jordan could respond. He stood in the doorway, folder in hand, watching her taillights disappear into the evening. Inside, Tim appeared from the kitchen. She's either the bravest woman I've ever seen or the most foolish. Maybe both, Jordan said quietly. The night before the custody hearing, Jordan couldn't sleep. He'd spent hours preparing with his lawyer, going over questions and responses, memorizing the timeline of that night, making sure every detail was perfect. His house was spotless. Lily's room was organized. Every piece of documentation proving he was a good father had been copied, filed, and ready for presentation. But none of it felt like enough. At 2 a.m., he gave up on sleep and went to Lily's room. She was sprawled across her crib, arms flung wide, dreaming whatever dreams 18-month-olds dreamed. He watched her chest rise and fall, her small mouth forming silent words. Your mom would know what to do, he whispered. She always knew. When things got hard, when I didn't think I could handle it, she'd just figure it out, like it was easy. Lily stirred but didn't wake. I'm scared, baby girl. The admission came out broken. I'm scared they're going to take you away, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. All the money in the world can't fix this. All the lawyers and character witnesses and evidence. None of it matters if that judge looks at me and sees what Nick Bennett saw. A black man who doesn't deserve what he has. He sank into the rocking chair beside her crib. I built a company from nothing, protected millions of people's data, made billions of dollars. But I can't protect you from this. Can't protect you from a world that thinks you'd be better off without me. His phone buzzed. A text from Rose. I know you're probably not sleeping. I'm not either. Just wanted you to know. Tomorrow, I'm telling the truth. All of it. No matter what it costs. You're not alone in this. You were never alone. Jordan stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed, Thank you. Jordan set his phone down and looked at his sleeping daughter. I promise you, he said softly. No matter what happens tomorrow, I will never stop fighting for you. Even if they take you away, even if the worst happens, I will spend every day of my life proving I deserve to be your father. Because you are everything, Lily. You're all of Sarah that I have left. You're all of me that matters. He stayed in that chair until dawn broke through the curtains, painting everything in shades of gold and promise. Lily woke just after 6, her eyes finding him immediately. She smiled, that pure, uncomplicated smile that said, Dada's here, so everything's okay. Jordan lifted her from the crib and held her close. Let's get you ready, baby girl. We've got somewhere important to be. By 8:30, he was dressed in his best suit. Lily wore a yellow dress Sarah had bought before she died, saved for special occasions. Tim drove them to the courthouse through streets that felt too normal, too ordinary for a day that would determine everything. Rose was already there, waiting on the courthouse steps. She wore a navy dress and her hands were shaking, but her spine was straight. When she saw Jordan, she nodded once. They walked into the building together, a billionaire father, his baby daughter, and the woman who'd chosen truth over family. The Miller family waited inside, flanked by their lawyer. Patricia Voss smiled when she saw them. It was the smile of a predator who'd already tasted blood. Jordan held Lily tighter, and the doors to the courtroom opened. Patricia Voss arranged her files. With practiced efficiency, each movement calculated to project confidence. She glanced at Jordan once, her expression neutral, already planning how to dismantle him. Jordan's lawyer squeezed his shoulder. Remember, stay calm, measured, truthful. Don't let her provoke you. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Warren entered, a woman in her late 50s with silver threading through her natural hair and eyes that missed nothing. Jordan felt something loosen in his chest. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. The next 2 hours were surgical. Patricia Voss presented her case with cold precision. She displayed stills from the viral video. Jordan soaking wet, Lily screaming, chaos captured in high definition. She called witnesses who testified about concerning behavior patterns. A child psychologist who'd never met Lily but had concerns about the impact of media exposure on developing children. A security expert who outlined kidnapping risks for children of high net worth individuals. She painted Jordan as reckless, attention-seeking, someone who'd prioritized revenge over his daughter's well-being. Mr. Carter had options, Voss said, her voice carrying across the courtroom. He could have handled the restaurant incident privately. Instead, he chose to make it a national spectacle. He filed lawsuits, gave interviews, and allowed his daughter's image to be spread across every news channel in America. What kind of father does that? Margaret Miller took the stand, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. We love Lily so much. We just want what's best for her. A stable home, privacy, a chance at a normal childhood. Jordan is a good man, but he's not equipped to handle this. The scrutiny, the danger, she deserves better, Thomas Miller corroborated. We failed our daughter by not supporting her marriage. We've had to live with that, but we can make it right by ensuring Lily has the life Sarah would have wanted for her. Then it was Jordan's turn. Jordan's lawyer called witness after witness. Lily's pediatrician testified about Jordan's attentiveness, his detailed knowledge of her medical history, and the way he never missed an appointment. The daycare director described how he volunteered for every field trip, how Lily's face lit up whenever he appeared. A neighbor talked about seeing Jordan in the park every Sunday, teaching Lily to feed the ducks. But it was Rose's testimony that changed the room. She walked to the stand in her navy dress, her hands steady now. Patricia Voss smiled slightly, already preparing to eviscerate her. Ms. Bennett, Voss began, her tone dripping with sympathy. You were romantically interested in Mr. Carter, weren't you? Yes. And when your brother prevented that relationship, you became angry. I became angry because my brother assaulted an innocent man and his child. But surely your judgment is compromised. You're testifying to help someone you have feelings for. I'm testifying because I saw what happened. Not from social media, but from the restaurant's CCTV footage. Jordan Carter sat down at a table I reserved for him. He hadn't even ordered yet. He was feeding his daughter, being a father. That's all. My brother made assumptions based on nothing but prejudice. He humiliated Jordan. He traumatized Lily. And Jordan's response? He showed more restraint than any of us deserved. Voss tried again. Ms. Bennett, isn't it true that you come from a family with a history of racism? Yes. My brother proved that, and I'm ashamed of it. Rose looked directly at the judge. But Jordan Carter has no such history. He has a history of being a devoted father, building a company that employs thousands, of grieving his wife while raising their daughter alone. If you take Lily from him, you're not protecting her. You're punishing him for being colored. The courtroom went silent. Patricia Voss recovered quickly, calling Jordan to the stand. She grilled him about his work schedule, his wealth, and his decision to go public with the lawsuit. Each question was designed to paint him as absent, distracted, and vengeful. Mr. Carter, you claim to be devoted to your daughter, yet you work 60-hour weeks. I work from home 3 days a week. I have a nanny for when I'm in meetings, and I've never missed bedtime, not once in 18 months. You're aware that your wealth makes Lily a target. My wealth also ensures she has the best security, the best education, the best health care. It gives her options. Or it makes her a pawn in a life she didn't choose. Jordan's jaw tightened. My daughter is not a pawn. She's the reason I wake up every morning. The reason I built everything I have. I didn't choose to go viral, Ms. Voss. Your clients are using what happened to me, what was done to me, as proof I'm unfit. That's not justice. That's cruelty. Your Honor, Voss said smoothly, we're not denying Mr. Carter was treated poorly. We're simply stating that his response showed questionable priorities. Judge Warren held up a hand. I've heard enough. Both sides will present closing arguments. Then I'll make my decision. Jordan's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this case isn't about whether Jordan Carter is perfect. It's about whether he's a good father, and every piece of evidence shows he is. The Millers abandoned their daughter when she married him. They weren't there for Lily's birth. They didn't attend Sarah's funeral. Now they want custody because they've decided Jordan's blackness is a liability. This court cannot reward that. Patricia Voss's closing was equally sharp, but Judge Warren was already writing. After what felt like hours but was probably 15 minutes, she looked up. I've reviewed all the evidence, heard all the testimony, and I'm going to be very clear. She looked at the Millers. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, your concerns about media attention are noted, but they don't outweigh the fundamental bond between a father and his child. Mr. Carter didn't create the situation at that restaurant. He was the victim of it. His decision to seek justice was not reckless. It was brave. She turned to Jordan. Mr. Carter, I see a father who shows up, who loves his daughter, who's trying to build a better world for her. That's not unfit. That's devotion. She paused. Petition denied. Mr. Carter retains full custody. Furthermore, I'm ordering a review of grandparent visitation rights, given the concerning motivations underlying this petition. Margaret Miller gasped. Thomas stood, his face red. This is outrageous. This is final. Judge Warren's gavel came down. We're adjourned. Jordan couldn't move. David was saying something, shaking his hand, but the words were muffled. All he could process was that Lily was still his, still safe, still home. Rose caught him in the hallway. She was crying. You won. We won, Jordan said quietly. You saved her, Rose. You saved us. I just told the truth. The truth cost something. I know what it cost you. She smiled through tears. It was worth it. 3 months later, Jordan stood in front of what used to be Bennett's family restaurant. The building had been renovated, new windows, fresh paint, a sign that read, Sarah's Table, a community space. He'd bought it anonymously through a shell company, hired a diverse staff, turned it into a place where everyone belonged. There was a dedication plaque by the door, in memory of Sarah Carter, who believed everyone deserves a seat at the table. Rose found out when she came for the opening. She stood next to Jordan, silent, staring at her parents' legacy transformed into something better. You didn't have to do this, she said. Yes, I did. Why? Jordan thought about it. About Nick serving 3 months in jail, coming out humbled and broken. About the apology letter he'd sent, genuine, raw, too late. About the choice to use wealth not as a weapon, but as a tool for change. Because Lily's going to ask me someday what happened. Why did her grandparents try to take her away? Why did a man pour water on us? He looked at Rose. And I want to tell her that even when the world is cruel, we don't have to be, that we can build something better. Rose nodded, then hesitantly, Jordan, I know you said you weren't ready, and I'm not asking for anything, but I'm still not ready, he said gently. But I'm not saying never, just not yet. However long it takes, she said, I'll wait. That evening, Jordan tucked Lily into bed. She was almost 2 now, talking in full sentences, asking impossible questions. Dada, why people mean? He sat on the edge of her bed, brushing blonde curls from her forehead. Sometimes people are scared, and scared people do scary things. You scared? Sometimes. But you are here. Always, baby girl. Always. She smiled and closed her eyes. Jordan watched her drift off. This child who looked nothing like him, but was everything of him. This girl who would grow up knowing her father fought for her. Who would learn that money couldn't buy dignity, but it could build bridges. Who would have to decide for herself what it meant to be black and white in a world that demanded you choose. He walked to his office and looked at Sarah's photo on his desk. We made it, he whispered. She's safe. She's loved. She's ours. Outside, the city lights glittered. Somewhere, Nick Bennett was rebuilding his life. Margaret and Thomas Miller were living with their choices. Rose was waiting for a future that might never come. And Jordan stood at the window, a billionaire who'd learned that power meant nothing compared to the weight of his daughter's hand in his. A father who'd won the right to keep being a father. But the question lingered, unanswered, echoing through the silence. How many fathers lose this fight? How many don't have the resources, the lawyers, the platform to prove they deserve their own children? How many black men stand in courtrooms and lose, not because they're bad parents, but because the world has already decided who belongs and who doesn't? And what does it say about justice when survival requires being extraordinary? When being good enough is never enough at all? Jordan didn't know the answer. He just held on to what he had and hoped it would be sufficient. For Lily. For all the Lilies who deserved better than the world they'd been born into. The end. If this resonated with you, please share it, and drop a comment telling me what you think about Jordan's choices, about Rose's courage, about what justice really means. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories, and I'll see you in the next one.